Hello, Kiana Sage here, Energy Psychology, doing part two of energy clearing. I'm trying to keep these short and simple so it's not too overwhelming, and certainly I am willing to answer any questions. If you put them in the comments, just let me know. So please do thumbs up and like and share these videos if you think they're helpful. Today I'm talking about two specific topics. Um, I want to address the question of how do you know um, something needs to be cleared, and how do you know when to clear, and what would be the indications for that? So let's start with the first question is, how do you know something needs to be cleared? So going back to part one, where you are becoming very aware, you have a physical body awareness, a mental body awareness, a uh, emotional body awareness, and a spiritual body awareness. As you become more aware of yourself in those aspects, that will help you enormously. So the key word here is awareness. Because if you don't have awareness of your own energetic field, the only thing that you will be able to attune to are those things that are discordant. So I thought I would use a couple examples of how you know when something needs to be cleared. Um, I'll use the example of like a toxic environment. And I've used this before when I was working as a consultant for an organization. Sorry, I'm distracted by my own very pink hair. When you are working in a toxic environment, and I was a consultant, and my office was moved from one location to another location, uh, to what I would say was a very toxic environment. And when you are in a toxic environment, there are layers of manipulation that go on. When there are layers of manipulation going on in a toxic environment, it is hard to distinguish what is actually happening with you. And so what happens often is people become anxious, they become paranoid. Many times, if you're a sensitive person, you might become sick, and you might start to feel things, because energetically, there's a lot of things that go on that you can't see, but you can feel. So there is something called energetic parasites. And these parasites start energetically, but what happens is if you're in a toxic environment long enough, what will happen is your system will become parasitic, and that weakens your ability to see, sense, and feel. So when you have a toxic environment, it you can't ever try to fix that environment. So that would be one thing to be aware of. So you could clear and bless the environment, which I'll talk about in later parts of this. You can do those types of things to an environment that will help to purify it. For example, when I go anywhere in a public uh, facility, I carry this energy with me, but I'm always calling forth things to clear spaces that I go to, especially, for example, like bathrooms, which they're literally like toxic waste dumps. And although they can be very clean on the surface, the undertone is when people are eliminating toxins from their body, things go up into the air. I mean, we all technically have an awareness of this, but we're not always aware that those toxins sit in that environment. And so do you want to go and have that in your energy? I don't. So I'm clearing. I'm not just clearing for me, I'm clearing for the entire environment. So it's really important to understand that when there is a toxic environment, you are always best to be addressing your energy field to the best of your ability, knowing that there are layers of manipulation going on. So oftentimes it may require that you leave the environment. Why? Because when you leave the environment, your systems get a chance to reset and you can come out of fight or flight. When you're in fight or flight, everything is distorted. Nothing you're seeing is what it is. It's all a distorted perception. So when you're able to come out of a toxic environment, for example, you can release the tension, reset your nervous system. And when you're able to do that, you can then look at what are some of your behaviors that are erratic, unnatural, somewhat distorted. So those would be indicators that you know you need to clear something. So one would be that you have a conscious awareness that this is a toxic area, i.e. the bathroom, a public restroom, or a public environment where a lot of people are participating in, like, let's just say a soccer game or a football game or a baseball game where there's a lot of people who are unconscious, even at airport. Um, you want to have a strong fortified field. Um, so things don't get stuck or lodged in it. The only way that things would get stuck or lodged within your field is if you have weaknesses, vulnerabilities, or lessons to learn. It's always going to be pretty much one of those three. Once you become more aware and conscious, you won't get hit less. It won't stick as much. Does that make sense? So how do you know something needs to be cleared? That would going back to is you knowing your field, and when something is inorganic, unnatural, that is not a source energy that is there. So it's really important for you always to be neutral, because it's not about judging this inorganic substance. It's not about hating it or disliking it or having a preference of like or dislike. It's, is it organic or not? Because when you are when your field is not clear and clean, meaning you have a lot of detoxing that needs to be done and a lot of learning, more awarenesses that need to occur, you're going to perceive things differently. So it's really important to have a really clear understanding of like your energy field. So that's one thing. Knowing and understanding your own personal behaviors. So when you're reacting or feeling or uncomfortable, those would be indications that something may be happening that is not organic. It doesn't always mean that's what's happening, but it might be an alert to that. So for me, I'm very sensitive and I always am feeling what is happening around me. I have a very keen body awareness. And when something feels discordant, I will sense it. So that's like one of my gifts with my clients is I can feel when people are incongruent. So you can imagine when I am at a football game or a baseball game and people are having these polarities of winning and losing, that's an incongruence, right? Because you want to be balanced. And when people are not balanced, I feel that. So that's not a bad thing, but it helps me to understand my own personal behaviors of when I may or may not be reacting. So I want to give you another example of how I go in to get greater awareness. Like one time I remember I was driving, having a conversation with a client, and the client said something to me, and my immediate response was so shocking to me that after the conversation was complete, I went back to like look at what was that response about. Was there something more for me to learn? So it wasn't that I'm unfamiliar with having a strong opinion, because I have a strong opinion. But when the opinion is so different than what I am accustomed to, I want to know more, like what is going on there? Is there something incongruent or not? And there may not be anything at play, but when you go into your own behaviors with curiosity and willingness to learn, well, then you can explore and become more aware. So that's how you know when something needs to be cleared is that you're familiar with your body. You're familiar with your emotions. You're familiar with your mental approaches. You're familiar with your spiritual exploration. And you have tendencies. Now, as you go up in levels of consciousness, you will become more fluid to ways of being. You'll become more neutral. You won't have, it doesn't mean you won't have an opinion. It means that you won't be attached to your opinions. So you don't really need people to agree or disagree with you because it doesn't matter. It's an opinion, and we're all entitled to opinions, right? Although we've gotten away culturally where people aren't really feeling that they can have opinions and be able to voice them, but that's another topic. Um, so, how do you know when you need to clear and what might be the indications? So, we already know that if something's not natural and it's inorganic, then you definitely know that you need to address something that's inorganic. Okay. What are the signs? The signs of needing to clear will always be what you sense, feel, or behavior. It's really that simple. So you want to look for things that are out of your normal way of being. So when you have a normal way of being that goes unchallenged, we are all habitual. So you want to start to challenge those things that are not normal, right? So that's how you're going to know how you're going. What is going to be an indication even deeper? A deeper indication is that you've been triggered, that somebody said something or a behavior did something and it's triggered you in some in a belief or in an emotion or maybe feeling wise, you feel like, oh, that was weird, or you feel maybe angry or hostile or frustrated. Those will all be ways that you can tell that something needs to be cleared. So, a trigger is a really big, like, alert for you. Um, when you need to clear is always best at the point of awareness. So, if you have an awareness like, oh, I've just been triggered, you definitely want to try and clear at that moment. If you can't, what I do is I'll make a note. I'll just put a note in my note on my phone and I'll use like a keyword about something or situation keyword, and I'll come back to it at the end of the day or the next day if I think it's going to be something that's much bigger. Um, than that. And I also want to say, so there's just three big things. So when you're triggered, always at the point of awareness. And if you can't clear at the point of awareness, then you want to make a note so you could come back to it. Because oftentimes when we're triggered, we want to forget it. And then what happens is we get re-triggered and then we never learn what it is that we need to learn or have the awareness that we need to have. So one of the ways that you can get stronger in this, and this may not be something that a lot of people want to do, but it's a healthy practice, which is, and I know in the healer energy community, a lot of people um, like to make decisions about what their lessons are or not spiritually. And that's usually an indication that the ego is involved, and that's another topic altogether. Um, how to address the ego. The ego is a very big problem when it comes to clearing because the ego will minimize um, discordant or deviant behaviors to keep things status quo. So that's really one of many reasons why you want to address the lower ego. But one practice that you could do that I have done is watch shows that will trigger you on TV, and you go and you consciously look for the trigger. So, for example, there was a show that was on, it was about New Orleans, and it was about the Katrina floods, and it was really a docu-series about what transpired during Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. And I thought it was I love documentaries, and it was a very well done documentary, but it triggered me a lot about um, things that I think are not good for humanity, like, how we treat people, how humane are we in the hospital settings, and how doctors have authorities. Like, it was layered with a many, many different things that were, for me, things that might be triggering, like shock. And I wanted to get out of being shocked, because for me, that would be a vulnerability in my field, is that when you go and you're shocked and or surprised about people's behavior, or about how people are, about things people say, or how they do things, when you go into shock, that is an insult to your nervous system. When your nervous system is overactivated and reactive, your responses are going to be distorted. So I made it a practice to watch this movie to try to stay neutral, which was very challenging when you're getting triggered by other people's behaviors, right? And this is a TV show. So it's a safe environment. I wasn't actually in the situation. So mentally, I knew I was safe, but you understand what I'm saying is that you actually put yourself in a situation to where you're learning. It's called experiential learning. And you learn to get stronger from putting yourself in the experiences that are not necessarily comfortable or wanted or preferred, so you can get stronger, so you can remain neutral in the state of being triggered. That is a practice that only comes with emotional maturity, with practice, and with resilience. And that's one way that you can get stronger. Now, most people want to avoid their triggers, which, I get. But your triggers are also going to be a vulnerability or a weakness in your energetic structures. So that's how you get infiltrated, is through your weakness. This is why it's so important and absolutely critical that you have your mental um, strength. And when I say mental strength, I don't mean rigid, and I don't mean doing the same shit all the time. What I mean is that you have a clarity about yourself mentally. That way you can recognize when you're being triggered. So you can address your emotional state. Say, I'm feeling, I'm knowing, I'm experiencing, and you're claiming it. Nobody else is responsible for your reactions but you. So your mental state is really one weakness that most people get manipulated with. And that's why we see so many people who are imbalanced, is because they don't have a strong mental state. And I don't mean a mindset. I see a lot of coaches out there and a lot of people talking about mindset. This is not a mindset. Mindset is about rigidity. It is about inflexibility. It is about a hyper focus on something. This is not about that. This is about mental strength. It's a discipline that when you really are mentally strong, anybody can say anything, and it bounces off of you. That's where you want to be to create a very strong field. So do me a favor, like this video, share it, comment, let me know what you think, and I will see you on part 3. Cheers to having a great weekend. Bye.